If the FCC has authority over broadcast television, so ostensibly if you implemented this rule, you could require a disclaimer on ads on broadcast, but could you require that same disclaimer on other channels such as streaming services or social media?
To be clear, Congress has given us this authority for broadcast, radio, satellite, and cable. That's a substantial portion of campaign ads, and we've exercised this authority as far back as 1938. So this is a system everyone has used for decades. Every single campaign reports when an ad was run, who paid for it. And on air, they say who's responsible for it. So we're just behind this principle of transparency, which is you should simply say if AI was used. It's nothing more complicated than that. We are proposing transparency. It's very simple. Was AI used, yes or no?
Sure, I understand that.
And separately, though, I want to just make one more point. We have these files for federal, state, local, and issues. In other words, it's a far greater community than what the Federal Election Commission oversees. That's why the vice chair said we have complementary authorities in this area, and I agree.
So here's a concern that I have, which is that if the FCC imposes this requirement, but that requirement is not mirrored by requirements on other channels such as social media and streaming services, then the public could become desensitized when they see an ad on one of those other channels that lacks that disclosure because they make the assumption that the disclosure applies to all the channels equally, and that's why we want to make sure that we get this right. This is actually an issue that the Artificial Intelligence Task Force here in the House has discussed, and I can tell you that the implementation of it is more complicated than merely requiring a disclosure because you have to talk about what AI is and what it isn't, what it's been used for and what it hasn't. And the example you and I were talking about, absolutely 100% is something that not only should require disclosure, should not be allowed, in my opinion. But the use of AI, to choose the opposite end of the extreme, to clean up the audio of a candidate that in a speech, which also occurs, is something that is completely benign and might not even require disclosure. So,
sure,
the devil's in the details.
I completely agree with you. This is complicated. I would be very happy to have a conversation about that, but it is very clear that transparency is a good thing. We have authority here, and also that you've got to start somewhere. Our proposal is just a request for public comment, and when you think about AI and the confusion involved and the complexities of these issues, asking for public comment about an issue of transparency is a good thing.
Right, I would agree, and let's work together to make sure that this happens.